So today we are going to be talking about website optimization and landing pages. And so this is going to be a really condensed version, an abridged version, if you will, of some SEO tips. Generally the basic and the fundamentals. There's a lot more to this area, but I thought I'd give you some things to get you started. So here we go. And I look forward to sharing some of my insights with you. Again, going back to webinar number 1, so 2 weeks ago, I introduced you to a B2B lead generation framework, and I recommend that if you haven't seen it, that you check that one out. Tonight, we are still talking about content and how we're going to develop content and your toolkit of content around that. So definitely keep that in mind as well. And you also will have a copy to my presentation in the chat there. So if you want to follow along, please do so and download the PDF so you can follow along as well. Today's session, what we're going to talk about is I'm going to start with the P.O.E.M Framework, which is a marketing framework, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and that'll set the stage for both this week and next week. So I just want to introduce you to that, and it'll build on last week as well. We're going to talk about how to conduct a website audit. We're going to talk about analyzing and identifying on-site and off-site SEO opportunities, and I'll be defining what that means as we move forward. Then the next thing are sort of some key elements of a successful landing page. So we're going to talk about landing pages because they are really often the first introduction that a lot of people may have to your website, and you want to make sure that you do that well. So that's why I've combined them today together. Now, in terms of the agenda, again, just a quick review of the P.O.E.M Framework to introduce you to that. We'll be using it this week and next week. And then I'm going to introduce you to a 5-step process for a website audit and sort of things to consider and things to think about. We're going to talk about on-site SEO and keyword research. So how do you figure out which keywords you should optimize for? Then we're going to talk about off-site SEO opportunities and why you might want to do that. Then we are going to do a really, really short version of landing page fundamentals. But in my additional resources, I have a link to an amazing free course that I would recommend anyone who's interested to watch. As usual, every week, I just want to give you a few action items and next steps of what you can do with all this information that I'm sharing with you. And then I also have a couple of slides of additional links and resources, which hopefully will give you even more details, because in an hour, I can't quite go into as much detail as one would like. So there we have the agenda for today. And let's kick it off. So P.O.E.M is this marketing framework that a lot of marketers use to formulate their marketing strategy. And this is not just digital marketing, this is all marketing. And P.O.E.M stands for paid, owned, and earned media. So that's what the P.O.E.M, where the letters come from. And really what it comes down to is it really looks at all the paid. So paid media is any kind of advertisement that you pay for, anywhere where you are paying for eyeballs, where you're paying for someone to look at your content, right? So that's what we call paid media. The second one is owned media, and that's what we're going to focus primarily on today. And owned media is content that you as an organization or your company creates, and more importantly, controls. So it's not just that you created it, but you actually have most of the control over that content. Websites would be the prime example of owned media. Blog pages might be that, and I'll give you a few more examples on the next slide. And then earned media is literally, you've earned the trust of your audiences so much so that they are talking about you sort of on their own, right? So it is content about your organization, services, or products, but it's created and or distributed by others. So this could be shared posts, shared content, posts just generally made by other organizations. Maybe someone recommends you. That's what we call earned media. You've earned your audience's trust, right? So that's why we call it earned media. Now, great to have definitions, but what we find is that for paid media, here are a few examples. So paid media in digital would be pay-per-click ads. We're going to be talking about that next week. Display or banner advertisements, video ads, those would be all paid media where you're paying often on a cost per click basis or a cost per impression basis, CPM. We'll talk more about that next week. But it also is offline stuff. So TV, radio, transit ads, anywhere you are paying to get your message in front of other people, that's what we call paid media. The next one is owned media. And owned media, as I mentioned, websites and blogs, but that's also events that you sponsor. It could be your newsletters, whether those are physical printed ones or e-newsletters. Another thing of owned media are your stores or your physical locations. What does that say about your company? And it even includes sort of your talent and employees, things that represent your brand voice that in some ways are out there speaking on behalf of your organization, right? We call that all kind of falls under the umbrella of owned media. And then there's earned media, right? And so earned media is literally that shared content that I mentioned, content by others. It could be reviews. It could be old school for those of us who date ourselves. Earned media used to be literally sort of newspaper articles. And if somebody picked up your press release, right, you earned the trust of the press that they covered you, right? So earned media is basically when someone else writes about your organization, your products, and your services, okay? And we focus a lot on earned media when we talk about social media, but tonight I really want to focus on the owned media piece, and we're going to focus primarily there tonight. Now, there are a couple of things where things overlap and they're kind of gray and muddy. So between paid and owned, that might be a sponsored post. So when I put a post on Facebook, I own the content, but Facebook owns the platform, right? So in some ways, and maybe I'm paying Facebook to show it to other people. So is that really owned completely by me? Is it really paid? It is paid, but there's sort of this overlap. So things aren't always, black and white. Sponsored influencers, sponsored customers would be another example of paid and earned media, right? So if you pay or you sponsor an influencer, you're kind of paying for them to create earned media that they feel you deserve. So it becomes a little muddy there as well. And then sort of between earned and owned, this would be if I actually say, please share with your friends. I've actually requested that you share something as part of maybe my marketing copy. So shared requests are when I initiate or ask you to share something. And last week we talked about communities and community-based links, lead magnets. So if you've created forums or niche communities, that might be a place that's earned where people can talk about things, but maybe you've organized the forum so it's somewhat owned by you as well. You might control it, you may have created it, but maybe you created it on LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn group. So it is a bit of earned and owned mixed together. So a lot of these things, there's a bit of overlap, but I want to give you this basic concept of paid, owned, and earned media. And it's a very common framework that's used within marketing. So now that we've done that, let's talk about website optimization. We're going to dive right in. And before we do that, I want to go back 2 weeks and talk about perspectives. Why are you creating a website? What is the purpose of your website? And the first audience that you should consider are your target audiences, which we talked about in our first webinar, target markets, customer personas. So that's what you want to think about. Does my website meet the needs of those customers? Or maybe you're trying to connect with partners or do some strategic alliances. So again, think about your website and the marketing and the messaging and the words from that particular audience perspective. Now that's one, and I put audiences in plural because you may have multiple. Maybe it's funders, maybe it's investors, right? So again, who are you trying to reach with your website? Think about that and look at your website and go, does that really address the questions maybe that they have? The second perspective are search engines. So search engines are going to come and they're going to crawl your website. And this is more machine to machine. So we're going to talk about what are some of the things you need to do structurally and in terms of content to make sure that the machine understands the context of what you have there. And then the last one is really the perspective of your organization and your brand. Does your website really reflect your audience, your brand, who you are, and how you want to be seen by others on the outside? So when you're looking at your own website, remember that there are these three, we have these three audiences. And I think that's a really, really important thing. And you want to make sure that you are addressing all three of them, right? So you might want to go through your website and go first, are we dealing with our customers? Are we addressing our partners? Are we addressing our investors? Then today I'm going to talk to you a little about the search engine piece. And then finally, is this consistent and authentic with the brand that we are and how we and who we want to be seen? So now that we have these perspectives, let's dive in. A 5-step website audit process. And some of these are going to have multiple steps. So again, Rochelle likes her circles and her buckets. So here we go. The first thing that I would recommend you do before you even necessarily start talking about your own website is go out and look at your competitors' websites. Go out and see what are they doing, what languages are they what language are they using, and look at your competitors' websites from the perspective of those at least the first 2 audiences that I had in my previous slide. So how are they trying to connect with your customers? How are they trying to connect with your partners? How are they trying to connect with your investors? What are they doing? What are they saying? What looks good? What kind of words are they using? So go out there and look at your competitors to understand exactly what their websites are, but make sure that they are competitors that you think are the same and that are targeting the same types of audiences that you're targeting. The next thing that you want to do are technical errors. So these are the easiest things to detect, and I'm going to go through this in more detail. So I think that what I will do, I'm just going to go over the overview here, and then we're going to follow up each slide and dive into each one of these in more detail, with the exception of competitive analysis, because that could be a 1-hour webinar on its own. But technical errors are probably the easiest thing to detect. So let's get through those first. Then we're going to talk about SEO, and there we're going to talk about that on-site, off-site, keywords, content, and here you have to often make some decisions and think about what it is you want to say and what words you want to use. So we're going to spend a fair bit of time in that circle tonight. Next, customer and user experience. What is the experience that your customers or your visitors have when they come to your website? Is that the experience you want? How easy is it to use, navigate, things like that? And then finally, we have design, right? So then look at your design. Now that you know what content you want, you know what you want that user experience to feel like, now you can put the polish on it and make it look beautiful. So generally, and then I like to say rinse, repeat, go back and go, how do we now compare with our website to our competitors? Have we addressed all the things? Are we standing out enough? And I'll go into some of those sort of unique selling proposition things in a bit, okay? So any questions around this at this point? Okay. So nothing, I don't see in the chat. So I think we're good. So on to the next bit, technical errors. As I said, these are the easiest to detect. Now, I do recommend that you use, there are quite a few website auditor tools that are out there. The second to last slide in tonight's PDF has a list of them, a table of them with price points, what they're good for, a few of the features, everything from free to higher paid things if you have multiple domains that you want to do this for. But that said, there are still a couple of things that you can do or that you should consider even before, just without using a tool, that I find are pretty common ones. So these are some of the most common things that I find. The first thing is, are you using a secure site? Is your site HTTPS? Do you have an SSL certificate? You can get these for free now. So definitely there's no excuse. And the reason you really want to have this is that you really want to have an encrypted connection for all of your visitors. It also impacts your search engine ranking. So if you don't have one, Google will actually give you a lower ranking for not being on a secure website. So it's something that you definitely want to invest in if you're looking to get on that first page of results when somebody types in specific keywords. The second issue that you really want to do, and from a technical perspective, is a page speed test. So testing how fast does your page load. There have been recent sort of studies saying that if it doesn't load in 3 seconds, so 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, you lose about 75% of your potential readers or visitors. So you don't have a lot of time. So make sure that you test to see how fast does your website load. And especially now on mobile, we are not waiting around for big websites to load. A recommended tool is Google Page Speed Insights. And so there's a link in the PDF there to that tool. And that's a great way to sort of get a sense of how well and how fast do our pages load. And don't just go to your homepage, go to other pages in case people land on other pages. One thing I've noticed is people often will do it just for their homepage, but forget that they may have other pages with lots of images or that have a lot of content on them deep into their website that take a long time to load. So try to sort of walk around your entire site and see how things are working. Broken images and links. So again, if you have broken images or links that don't work, that sort of return a 404 page not found, this actually does affect your website's ranking, search engine ranking. And it's also really annoying as a visitor to click on a link and it just doesn't go somewhere. Now, again, a lot of the website audit tools will highlight broken links and will let you know what's not working. But you can also just click on the links in your website and make sure they're going where you want to. Sometimes it's a typo, as simple as a typo that you mistyped a URL or something like that. And then mobile optimization. As I mentioned before, a lot more people, the majority now of people actually access websites via their mobile phones versus laptops or desktops. So, you want to make sure that you are mobile friendly for that mobile experience, but Google is also now, decreasing websites that are not mobile optimized. And this usually from a template or website perspective, you may hear the term responsive. Basically, you have a design that adjusts depending on the size of the screen. So you definitely want to have designs and templates that are sort of responsive, that are mobile friendly, so that the mobile experience is very good and that it's not just the desktop shrunk down for a very small screen. So those are kind of the common technical errors. It's not everything, but I just thought I'd give you a thing to think about at first. So let's dive into on-site SEO. What is on-site SEO? And this is often what people think about when they do SEO. The off-site one is probably going to maybe new to many of you, but on-site SEO is really the content and the structure of your website, looking at that so that it ranks well against search phrases that are relevant to your website, right? And when I say rank well, for most people, that means they want to be on the first page of the Google search results, which means in the top 10, because that's what most people have. They haven't adjusted the pagination. So most people will see the first 10 and they have to go to page 2. And I would ask you to just think back, when was the last time you went to page 2? When was the last time you actually scrolled to page 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 to find what you're looking for? So you really want to be there and make sure you do that. The other thing I want to highlight, so let's go to the next page. So what I want to do is a big part of this are identifying keywords. Now, early on, we were talking about keywords and we literally meant words. What we are finding now with SEO is that really thinking as much about phrases and questions as you think about keywords. So making sure you actually have phrases. What kind of phrases are people going to use? Literally, what kind of questions are they going to ask? Now, the other reason we do questions, and this is something that a lot of people in marketing are not thinking about as much, is voice search. So when I ask one of my, whether it's Alexa or Siri or Google, for example, a certain question, usually it's going to be a question. What is blah? How do I do X? So if you have content that actually answers some of these voice search questions, those answers are more likely to be used in those situations as well. So questions are really important. Now, keywords are another big domain. There's a lot of information there that you can cover. What I've given you here in this spreadsheet is a list of roughly 10 different keyword research options, right? And they have their pros and cons. So like Google Search Console, you may hear about that, gives you data about the keywords you already rank for. So that's a really great place to start. What am I already good at, right? What is my website really matching on really well? Keyword Planner may find other keywords. The one downside is that when it talks about search volumes, it often now only gives you ranges. It used to give you specific numbers. Now it gives you a range. So 10K to 25K within that range, but it still will give you a sense of some really good keywords. Google Trends will give you it will visualize a keyword over time. So for example, if you did the word Halloween, you will notice that there is always a spike in Halloween around October, right? And that if you do 5 years time, you will see a peak in trends of that specific word at specific times of the year. So if there's any seasonality, if there are things that people tend to search for at specific times of the year, sometimes Google Trends can highlight when that is and what that looks like. Then I would say, okay, so, and just so you know, posted Keyword Planner excludes all cannabis related search terms. So for those of you in the cannabis industry, take note. The next one, Keyword Generator, finds up to 150 keyword ideas. With a seed keyword, so you can give it a word. Rochelle might give them orange because that's my favorite color. And then it would give me other keywords related to orange, right? Orange juice maybe, and a variety of other things. So it'll come up with up to 150 words for any keywords. Keyword Sheeter, autocomplete suggestions. So if you're, when you're typing things in and Google autocompletes, it tells you, what might those autocompletes look like if you were typing in those keywords. Answer the Public is great because it finds those questions, comparisons. It's a very detailed thing and related searches from what the public is searching. So maybe someone is talking, maybe they use different terms. And you want to know what's the term people are most likely to use or what's synonymous. So Answer the Public. Keyword Surfer is a Chrome extension that estimates the global and 19 countries, including Canada, monthly search volumes. So that's kind of nice. Keyword Reddit and QuestionDB focus on sort of specific topics relative to Reddit. So they're sourcing their content from Reddit. So they're matching keywords with things that are happening in Reddit and subreddits. And then Bulk Keyword Generator is a keyword search for local SEO. So if you're doing hyper local, if you're targeting local people, and it does it by industry. So if you're a plumber or if you were a restaurant, that might be a really great place to do that because you can pick an industry and then it sort of does a bunch of keywords related to that industry. So these are just resources that I recommend you might want to take a look at and, really understand what's going on. But here's the other thing, like old school, just Google keywords that you come up with and look at the results. Like type it into Google and see what the results are. Who's there? Who are in the top 10? And go to their websites, check it out, because why are they in the top 10 if you're not there? What is it that they're doing? What is it that they're saying? How are their websites structured? So I always say, borrow from best of breed. So definitely go and see who is matching on keywords that you think are important. Also pay attention to that people also ask box that you now see on Google for search suggestions, right? People also ask, what is blah, blah, and Google there will have lots of questions. So click on some of those to see also, are the same sites in the top 10, are different ones in the top 10. And, if you spent half an hour just doing that, you probably can even start finding some of those competitive websites that maybe you should be using as a benchmark to what you want to do, right? Any questions up to this point? So Trevor is saying we are in a David and Goliath type situation where to really help people understand what we're making, we have to refer to the big players' brands. This has posed a challenge for our keyword generation. Any ideas? So Trevor, really what I would recommend in terms of David and Goliath is, yes, I mean, it definitely helps to use their brand, and it can be dicey to use it. I tend to use it sometimes on like a comparison web page where I compare them to us, where features and benefits. So that's a very valid use of, you're just comparing your stuff to them. But then I also would use and yes, Anil Patel has a tool for keywords as well, correct? And I would also recommend that you think about how what words are they using on their website to describe their products, and generically, not necessarily the brand, but if there are just sort of generic words that they're using to describe their products, start using those as well. So that if people start doing searches, yes, they might search on the brand, but if they search on the product category or service category, that you match along that as well. Any other questions? Okay, so some ideas here to get started. So from a technology perspective, and I'm assuming some of you are pretty good on the tech side, so that's an assumption I made. I hope I'm not too wrong. But basically from a technical thing, when you're looking at your keywords, think about, are those keywords in your URL? So yes, there's your domain name. And if it's in your domain name and your domain name is descriptive, as much as that isn't sexy and cool, sometimes those really work well, descriptive domain names. But also think about the paths. Think about basically the subdirectories that you have in your domain names. And do you have the right keywords there? Because that is something to keep in mind. And in your paths, if you have phrases, do try to break those up either with dashes or with underscores, so that Google and the search engines, when they're looking at those paths, know where to break them up. It's all one word, and it's hard to know how to break up the word. The machines are better at it, but make it easy for them. So put in dashes, put in underscores, and that helps with making sure that those phrases are very recognizable from a machine perspective. So think about your URLs and think about your paths along that, okay? Next, title tags. So every web page has a title tag. And this is part of sort of the metadata for the page. Do your title tags have the keywords that you want in them, right? So check your title tags and make sure that they actually have the keywords that you want to match for. And make sure that you have unique title pages for unique pages. And this can be a pain, I know. It's nice to have the same title tag that you can just put in all of your headers and all of your web pages, but really making sure that the title tag is specific to that page will help make sure that when people search on something specific that page and only that page speaks to, that's where they land, as opposed to landing on a home page or landing on every page that has the same title tags. Header tags is another thing. So Google does header tags. This is like H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and that is a hierarchy. So H1 tags have more weight than H5 tags do, but make sure that in those header tags, again, you're using the appropriate keywords and that you have the right weight. So the more important ones should have higher numbered or lower numbered H tags, so H1, H2, H3, and maybe if things are sort of secondary, you can have them in a lower header tag designation, but that tells them and gives a really good sense of what's going on. Then meta descriptions and snippets. So meta descriptions are often that, I'm going to show you an example on the next slide, but it is sort of that description that you often see on the Google search that describes what the web page is about. So check your meta descriptions and make sure that you have something there that has the keywords that you want. Obviously your main content and making sure that your main content uses it. Do not overuse keywords, use them in a very natural way. There used to be something that we called keyword stuffing, where you would stuff as many keywords into every sentence as possible. Do that very sparingly and try to make sure that you have you use them in a way that seems natural. You can use synonyms, that is perfectly fine, but definitely in your main content, make sure that it is natural and doesn't seem like you're trying to stuff as many keywords onto a page as possible. Someone's asking about the title tag information. Yes. So on your title tag, basically every page has a title tag, and generally I like to think of it, you might not even know it, but have you ever had tabs open on your browser? And if you move your mouse over the tab, there's like a little bubble that pops up that tells you what that tab is. That's the title tag for the actual page. And so for that, this is part of your header on each page. You can actually put different keywords into it. And I just recommend that, for example, if I have on my website, I might have on my homepage Rochelle Grayson as my title tag. But then on my about page, I might have Rochelle Grayson dash about Rochelle as my title tag for the about page. So the about page is different than my home page. So the title tags are very unique to the pages that they refer to. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Then we have image alt text. So you want to do this for a variety of reasons, for SEO purposes, but also for accessibility, so that people who are using accessibility software know what images are present on your website. But really what this means is for every image, use the keywords that you want as the alt text. This is another tag on your images. You should have, all your images should have alt text, and that alt text, where appropriate, should incorporate keywords. So that again, when Google's looking at your page and crawling your page, wow, okay, that image also supports your keywords, right? Not just the words, but also the images that are there. That's something to keep, can make it happen. Then we have file names. So what files is your image file img_967.png, because that's what came out of your smartphone or your camera? Change it. Change it to literally make sure the file names themselves have the keywords or are descriptive enough that they actually can give Google some context as to what's in them, right? So not just the alt text, but also the names, the literal file names they say that themselves. Or is there a PDF? make sure it's not just a generic PDF name. Give your PDF, think about your file names that you are promoting and that you're uploading to your website, and make sure that they have the right keywords in them as well. And then finally, anchor text. So anchor text, for those of you that are not technical, are kind of those links that you have in your website that link to maybe other pages. Try not to be like, click here for your link, because Google then sees the name, the title of that text is click here, and Google doesn't know what that is going to. It would be much better to say, here's a wonderful link to our presentation about website optimization and landing pages. And you underline the website optimization and landing pages. So the link that you're using, the part that you're linking actually has keywords in it, so that when Google sees that text, they know that, oh, this link relates to those words, right? Otherwise, Google thinks that link relates to the words click here, right? So think about and try to use language to describe where you are sending someone, and try to be as specific as possible and think about those internal links, okay? So anchor text, when you go through your web pages and you look at the links that you have to other pages on your website, we'll talk a little bit about outbound links to even to other websites, be as specific as possible, because that tells Google and the search engine crawlers exactly where, like what words are associated with that link, okay? Any other questions? Okay, so brief, again, these are key. This is not everything, but these are some of the big bucket ones that you can all think about, and hopefully can make some really quick changes to improve your SEO and go back to those keywords and make sure that you are matching on those. Now, here's an example I just want to show you of a meta description or a snippet. So you can see I did a search here on search engine land, and then underneath this, we've all probably seen this, there was a little bit of a description about the search engine land web page. That's what we call a meta description, and that goes into your header. A lot of websites, even website tools, will allow you to put words into that. So make sure you have in that description the keywords that you want to match on, right? And you can put this on every page. So don't just generically have the same one for all your pages. If your page is about your products, then your meta description for your products page should literally be talking about your products, and put your product names or your service names and everything in there. It is more work, but it also means that when people land and when they search your website, people will end up where they're supposed to, not just on the homepage going, where do I go now? Okay, next, off-site SEO. And so this is a little bit different. So off-site SEO is basically this concept that all the things you do, all the activities, marketing activities, content you create outside of your own website that link sort of back to your own website. So the reason we want to sort of encourage this for you, sometimes it's called off-page SEO. So off-site, off-page SEO are pretty much synonymous. So these are all the activities, things you do in social media, things that you might do on a directory, if you go to a forum. So these are all those activities. And the reason this is important is because when you create content elsewhere and you link it back to your website, Google now, or I'm going to use Google. I'm using Google because Google is mostly the search engine that we optimize for. Google now says, oh, there's a link between Rochelle's website and this other website because there's a piece of content and it points back to Rochelle. And we start building sort of what we call sort of link neighborhoods, right? So we are now associating ourselves with all these other websites through the links that exist. So these activities and connections identify the external websites that I'm going to call part of your online digital network or family, right? So those links create literally like you are now connected to these other websites, and if those are good websites, they actually will impart, and it's a very challenging sort of algorithm, but they start giving you a reputation. So if you remember as a child and your parents said, oh, be careful who you associate with because that'll establish your reputation, it's the same online. The websites you are connected with will give you reputation and lend a little bit of their own reputation by allowing for those connections to happen. Now, link building is often what people talk about when they're talking about off-site SEO, and it is probably the main tactic that is used here. So content marketing, which we talked a lot about last week, and I'm not going to go into as much detail tonight. So if you want to know more about it, watch last week's webinar, is a function of that. Social media marketing, being on podcasts, writing reviews. Directories, especially for business to business, are great places for you to have a presence with a directory that is an industry directory that is now linking back to your site. That really gives you a great sort of reputational boost. But there are a lot more, and I'm just going to sort of highlight a few. But a lot of the content marketing and lead magnet pieces that we talked about last week, you are creating content across the internet to bring people from other places to your website. Those lead magnets, make sure that you have links to very specific places in your website so that when they land, your website is now being connected to all of the places where that content lives. Now, there are a couple of questions here. Are there timeframes to consider when building SEO? How often should it be reviewed and updated? Great question, Trevor. I'm going to answer that now. I was going to answer it later, but usually I recommend that you look at your SEO at least once a year. That is my, you can do it more frequently, but at least once a year because things change so quickly. In my world, I often say 6 months is a generation. So if you wait a year, it's been a couple of generations. It might be time to look at your website and make sure that it's up to snuff. And look at your competitors. There might be new competitors who've entered the market. When you do the update and review, it will hopefully take less time the next time around. But also as websites get bigger, sometimes we get, as they say, link rot, we get broken links, things start to change. We forget about stuff. Content gets old and dated. And I'll get into that in a second. So you want to do that. Is it impossible to include more than one keyword for a web page? Yes. So again, the keywords, you don't add the keywords. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, if I want my web page to match on Rochelle, digital marketing, I want it to content marketing, social media marketing, consulting, then if those are the 5 keywords that I want to match on, then I need to create content that actually has Rochelle in the words content marketing, social media marketing, digital marketing, and consulting on that page. So that's how you start adding. Basically, the words you use should reflect your list of keywords that you want to match on. Now, not every page has to have them all. So you might want to say this page, we're going to focus on these 10 keywords and make sure that those 10 keywords are on that page. And then on another page, we're going to focus on maybe a separate set of 10 keywords. So that's why you want to really think about that list before you even get started looking at your content. What are the keywords? What are the searches that you think people are going to do? And then when they search on that, where do you want to direct them? Where do you want them to land so that they get the information that they want? The difference between keywords and key phrases. So for example, keywords would be social, marketing, digital, marketing. Key phrases would be social media marketing together, or digital marketing together. So those would be phrases, words that you really want to have together. And so keywords are great, but social may not, if you had the word just on its own without media marketing after it, could be social ventures, right? It could be social responsibility. So you might want to, key phrases are tighter and often have a higher sense of matching than just a single word. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. So next, what we're going to do is sort of some key concepts around this off-site SEO, outbound links. So I was just talking about, putting content outside and having links to your website. I'll get to that in a second, but outbound links, when you write a blog post, if you are referencing someone else's article, last week we talked about curated content. Someone wrote a great article and you were writing a reply or commentary about their article. Make sure that you list the name of their article. So use the title of the article and then link to their website. Outbound links still create a connection between your website and the other person's website. Not in a forced way, not that you're trying to get them to reciprocate, but basically it shows that you are talking about something that lives on someone else's website and you are adding some additional value to it. So outbound links actually increase your SEO ranking when done judiciously. Do not do this because just to be like, oh, I'm going to link to everybody so I get stuff. It's not about that. But instead of saying, oh, there was this great article, called this, link to it. Again, it's a link, so make sure that the words that you use are the titles, so Google knows that that's what that link is referring to. And then you can start building some connections. These are going to be pretty low-level connections, but you will start building connections with other websites. Inbound links are what I was talking before. Those are links that exist, for example, on Facebook. My one thing that I tell people, if you have a Facebook page, does your Facebook page have your website URL on it? In the about section, have you actually put your URL? They have a space for your website, but have you also put it in the description, right? So this is why sort of links from social media pointing back to your website tell Google that, oh, this page and this Instagram page and this LinkedIn profile and this LinkedIn page all are connected to this website, and it can start to build a profile of what's going on and what's important to you. So inbound links are important, and a lot of lead magnets that we talked about last week, a lot of those ideas are about building content outside of your website and then providing links back to your website to download content. Sign up for your newsletter and things like that. So that's a big part of what you're doing with that content marketing. Content, now the content on your page, there are a couple of things you should consider. Is it original? So how unique is it? Is it an original piece of content? Is it fresh? Did you write it 10 years ago, or is it written recently? Search engines like fresher content. So this is sometimes why I say once a year, you might want to either get rid of content that's old and stale or update it. Update the same article with the latest and greatest, right? I've seen lots of articles, and that's a great way because Google's, oh, there's something new, and Google's happy, right? They don't want to just keep the old stuff. How much content do you have? Is there a lot of content? The more content you have in a specific area, the more Google starts to learn this is your area of expertise. That might be your thought leadership, things like that. But then also the quality. So how accurate is it? Is the grammar good? Are they longer? Sort of longer, I'd say mid to longer pieces of article will rank higher, but we all know people don't like reading long articles. But short pieces of content tend to, from an SEO perspective, don't add as much value as something that's a couple of paragraphs versus something that's literally one paragraph, right? So try to have a little bit more context. And again, is it unique? So this is really what Google's looking at from a content perspective. Is it original? Is it fresh? Is there enough of it? And is the quality good? And the quality also is a matter of if your page matched my search, let's say I'm a searcher and I get your page and I click on it. If I come back to Google immediately, Google goes, oh, that page doesn't match on that term very well. So also, if you get people coming and bouncing back very quickly, that also signals to Google the quality of that content doesn't match that term as well as perhaps might be expected across a lot of searches for that topic. Backlinks, as I mentioned, so backlinks are sort of those links from other websites back to your website. Again, it's kind of, I probably should have, I messed this up, but inbound links and backlinks are often referred to in the same way. Again, how many backlinks do you have increases your reputation, provided the sites that you are getting links from coming back to your website are good websites, right? How fresh are those backlinks? Are those backlinks from 2010 or are they from January 2021, right? Then Google will also look at those other websites. Are they related? Do they seem to have similar content? Okay, if they are, that's really important. That's good. That's relevant. And that tells us that we're all part of the same community. What anchor text are they using, right? So again, remember we talked about the anchor text, the text for the link that you use for your own website. Make sure that when you do it on other websites that you also use good text and that it's not just click here, right? Now, sometimes you have bad backlinks, meaning that you don't want to be associated. Somebody links to you and you're like, no, I don't want you to link to me. In those cases, there is a tool called Google Disavow tool. I have a link here and you can click on that to basically say, no, Google, please just disavow, like, I know they've made a connection to me, but I do not want that to be part of my SEO reputation. So that allows you to get rid of bad links at maybe in other areas. So keep that in mind. Link diversity. So it is great to have websites that are similar to yours, but also think about, are some sites a directory? Is another site maybe an education spot? Is another directory a community? So a diversity of where this content lives or where these links live increases your rankings and increases your reputation. These are all about reputation building. Google wants to know, are you real? right? So this is how you build your reputation, not just by being great in one area, but by having a variety of people who find the content that you are talking about interesting and effective. And then finally, social signals, so social sharing. This gets into why we also want other people to share our content. And basically that tells Google that the community as a whole, even on their own websites, even with their own social accounts, social media accounts, are willing to share that information as well. Now I see a couple of questions here. So how is it possible when you search for a specific brand, another brand would come up in a Google search? So that is because if people have searched for a brand and that other brand often comes, here's the thing, they don't necessarily even have to have that brand on their website. But if they come up enough times within, let's say, the first 10 pages, your reputation, let's say I'm looking for Coke or Pepsi, right? Or I put in cola, right? And I put in cola, I'm searching for cola, and Coke and Pepsi show up. Some people will click on Coke, some people will click on Pepsi. So Google starts recognizing that Coke and Pepsi are very, very closely linked. So now if somebody types in Coke, Google might also show Pepsi, because Pepsi is a kind of cola that is often very much, when people talk about this product area, they come up often together. Can you think of an example of a brand piggybacking on another brand through keywords, links, etc.? I'm gonna have to stew on that. There are quite a few examples. I might come back to that one at the end if we have time. I just want to make sure I get through everything tonight. So I'm just gonna postpone that for now, if you're right with that. And but it's a great question. And if I don't, I will try to maybe post it or give my answer to New Ventures BC, then they can post that to the YouTube comment section when they post it on YouTube. Okay, so let's leave that live for now. Develop content and lead magnets. So the one thing I want to highlight around develop content and lead magnets here is, remember last week we talked about lead magnets, where you basically give away something for free and hopefully in return you get someone's contact information so you can start engaging with them. That's a huge portion of off-site SEO. And so really go back to last week's seminar and talk and explore a lot of these different types of lead magnets. I think we listed 70 last week. So you can go back and start thinking about those as ways to bring or create backlinks back to your website. Now, I've also here in this one given you sort of another article around 14 link building strategies for 2021. So I recommend you check out this article as well, where they've just given some very specific and great examples around link building. So I want to make sure you had those as well. Now, customer experience and user experience, there's a whole domain around this. So please, for those of you who are experts in this area, I apologize up front, but I'm going to give some people some basic tips. Make sure that your navigation is simple and easy to use. So there are a couple of things that I often ask, like how many clicks does it take to get to the relevant information, right? How many clicks do I have to go through my website to get to the information I might want? And again, think about your audiences, right? So those audiences we talked about at the beginning, how long does it take them to get the information they want? Is my navigation intuitive? Meaning, does it follow standard practices? For example, we tend to have call to action buttons on the right-hand side, and they usually might be bigger or bolder. So, having a call to action on the left is often a really weird thing. That's not where people expect it to be, right? So making sure that the navigation makes sense based on just common things that we have on a website. Is there a search bar? There are sometimes two different kinds of visitors. You have people who browse, who just click around to see what's going on, what's happening. And then there are people who are searchers. They know what they're looking for. And if they can just type in a search term on your website to find exactly what they're looking for, that's what they want. It'll save them time and they don't have to click around to find it. So do you have customer experiences that deal with maybe both of these major audiences often that you will find, browsers versus searchers? Unnecessary obstacles and hurdles. Pop-ups are a big one. I know we all love the pop-up, get people to sign up for our email newsletter, but they can be problematic on mobile. Even the automatic live chat pop-ups, so, oh, can I help you? Those can be annoying, and those can also be something that pushes people away. So understand, I put unnecessary in quotes. Some people may say that's really important to us, but understand you are also going to lose certain customers because of that. And if you're okay with the balance of that, look at your Google Analytics to find out. then that's great. But just keep that in mind that pop-ups are not our preferred experience. So look at your bounce and exit analytics to make sure that you understand where people are bouncing quickly, where people are coming in and leaving immediately, because that will give you a good sense of what's going on that page. What are we doing that we think is so awesome that may be actually deterring people from sticking around? Finally, relevant and credible content. So is the content relevant? Is it credible? Is the most important content at the top of the page? And then as you scroll, less important information. So you really get people with the juicy bits at the top. And then if they want to know more, give them more as they scroll down. So definitely there should be a hierarchy in terms of most important at the top, work your way down. And are we answering and solving our target customers' questions, pain points, and challenges, right? Are you doing that? Finally, make sure you have some social proof. So online now, we want to know that you're real and that you can deliver and that you're not just someone who created a cool website. So testimonials are often what we call social proof. You're proving that that you are real and that who you are matters and that people sort of give you a stamp of approval. So testimonials, maybe having some customer or client logos. If you have certifications that show that you've been certified or that you've been on a list, awards, things like that are really helpful, especially in this digital world where we're trying to assess, is this a good company? Is this not a good company? Social proof really helps with that. And then clear call to actions. What is it you want me to do? And so also, again, like with the anchor text, what is it you want me to do? And what will happen when I click on this button? Not just like learn more, learn more. What? Tell me what can I expect when I click on this button, right? Make sure that it's very clear where I'm going to land and where you're sending me, right? So clear calls to actions, that could be color and a variety of things. Design is the last piece that we're going to touch upon. And it really is around consistency across your entire website. So consistency of fonts, making sure they're not too small or maybe too informal, that they match your audience and what they would expect to see. If you're doing a creative site, it can be really creative. But if it's fairly conservative, professional, make sure that the fonts are appropriate. Imagery. Are your images clear? Are they good definition? Make sure they're not muddy. PNGs work better than JPEGs. They also tend to be smaller. So if you can, get a PNG file. But are your photos similar? Are your icons a certain style? If you have clip art and icons and photos and they're all different styles, it kind of looks a bit mixed up, but not quite consistent. So what's the consistency? You can have them, but make sure that all the photos maybe are a certain style, all the icons are a certain style, all the clip art is a certain style, and that it makes sense. Ideally, you want to sort of minimize a number of imagery styles that you have on your website to probably 1 or 2 maximum. Colors. Are they your brand colors? Do they make sense for who you are? Does a layout make sense? That kind of speaks a bit to the customer experience. So going back, once you know what content you want, you know what the customer experience should be like, do the layouts actually allow that to happen? Can I get there in 2 clicks? If that's your goal, does the layout support that, right? Calls to action. Are your calls to actions, are they consistent? Are you using the same colors, same size? Often there might be also a hierarchy of call to action. So you might have the primary one as a big button, and maybe the secondary one is just a link. So they're there next to each other, but basically the big one is a call to action, the primary thing, and the link is a secondary one. And then brand voice. So we have brand voice, we have everything around, is this true tone to what you're doing? And are you using white space? Leave lots of white space so that people understand and can actually understand what is being presented to them. Don't cram everything into a very small space. White space is your friend. I'm going to just briefly, and I'm going to quickly talk about landing pages. And the first thing I want to highlight is attention ratio. And attention ratio is basically the number of things, clicks, if you will, a visitor can do on a page relative to the number of things you want them to do, that they should be doing, right? And usually we have a primary action we want them to do. So if we look at a typical homepage, something like this is just a wireframe, there's a buy now button at the top, download free trial, save time, read our blog, send us feedback, get to know us, cloud integration, so simple to use, lots of different ways of calls to action on a homepage, right? So what this basically is saying is if I add up all those potential clicks, I'm leaving out the navigation bar just for now, more the calls to action. The attention ratio is 8 to 1. what do you really want them to do? My guess is you want them to download the free trial, but they could do any of these other things as well, right? And so as this ratio goes down, meaning as that number on top, as that 8 goes down to 5 to 6 to 2, conversions go up. Meaning give your people fewer options means that they're going to pick one of the few options that are there. Now, I know for a lot of people, like, oh, we want to show them everything. Sometimes too much information is not a good thing. So make sure that on each page, you understand what is it you really want them to do and make sure you focus on that. This gets us to our landing page. When you bring someone to a landing page, ideally, you want to have one call to action. Now, I know people are like, oh, well, we want to give them access to the rest of our website. But if they've landed there based on an ad or something like that, you want to convert them. So minimize the calls to action to as few as you possibly can. Call to action, maybe 1, maybe 2, another one to like check out our website. But basically, they're there because they're interested in something. Get them to commit. And so what you want to do is when you're looking at webs and your landing pages, make sure that you have as few other links as possible so that they can do the one thing you want them to do. Sign up for a newsletter, give me your email address, subscribe to our thing, right? So that's really important. In terms of what you should have on a landing page, there are 5 things that I want you to walk away with tonight. So the first thing is a heading with a unique selling proposition. What is it that you're selling on this landing page? What is it that you're offering them? What is it that they came there to find out? And make sure that that's there. You want to have what we call a hero shot, a visual there. So visuals are great. Text is great, but add a visual that relates to your heading and that makes sense. If you've used visuals in your ads, make sure it is a similar visual, if not the same visual. So the ad ties into the landing page. Talk about benefits, not features, benefits to them, and make sure that they're short. So bullets are great. What are the benefits? Why are they there? What are the benefits? Have some social proof, a testimonial, some logos. This is why you signed up, because we're really good at what we do. Have a call to action, right? So basically, call to action, benefits, unique selling proposition, a visual, and social proof should be on every landing page that anyone ever lands on. And so check yours to make sure that that's there. So again, your action items, perform your 5-step website audit. If you have already recently, you're good. Wait a year and maybe you can go back and do something, but I recommend doing this on an annual basis. Check your landing pages and make sure that you are addressing each one of these so that when people land there, they can actually go and do things really, really well, right? So that's what I recommend you do. I've given you a whole bunch of articles as well as usual with additional checklists and resources, checklists, SEO, UX. At the bottom of this page is an unbounced landing page course. It's free. It probably takes about 3 hours to go through it, but I would strongly recommend that you look at it. A lot of the tips there also apply to website pages. So it's sort of a double whammy. I would definitely recommend it. Unbounce, our local heroes as well, Vancouver company. And then I've also given you a table of a variety of website auditor tools, price points, and some basic features to get you started around who's out there and what makes sense. So there you have it. I will now stop sharing, and I've gone over, but not by too much tonight. So I want to thank you guys and thank you for attending. Hopefully that's been helpful. I will stick around if anyone has any other questions for a few minutes, but thank you guys. I hope that gets you started and gets the juices flowing.
Awesome. Thank you, Rochelle. As always, you've packed a lot in to a short amount of time, which I think is great. And the slides are very useful with references. So I think hopefully that's a great takeaway. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Same time, same place next week.
Yeah, right. Same bad channel. See you next Thursday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.